the example of you don't know what's under the bed, so you're going to be scared, oh, what if there's a monster under the bed? You're constantly going to be scared if you don't know what is going on. If you know that something bad's happening, but you don't actually know how it happened or what I can do, it's always going to make you feel really anxious. And so we can use climate education to sort of be like, it's okay, it's not all going awfully, but here is what's going bad and here's how you can fix it.
Sustainability used to be on the Ofsted criteria, it fell off. There was a 2020 agenda that just disappeared, very much like a scene of George Orwell's 1984, couldn't find track or trace of it.
Climate education in the UK definitely isn't intersectional enough. Right now it's purely scientific or it's purely Anglo-centric, and also it makes sense to learn about how our country's doing. It doesn't make sense to completely forget about every other country that is.
I think it's important to learn about what is happening in the whole planet, not just like in your country, like in all of them.
And even within our own country, there's so many different intersectionalities when it comes to the climate crisis. If you're poorer or if you're a person of colour, if you're a girl, if you're disabled, you're way more likely to be impacted by the climate crisis. We need to make sure that every student is prepared to deal with that future.
Like, it impacts everyone around us, and if everyone's living in a safe, happy environment, most likely people will be like happy and nice to each other.
It's their future. It's not our future, really. It's very much more their future. They have to be part of this conversation. And by the way, they are aware of the crisis. They're going to be processing that. They're going to be having to deal with it, even if you think they're not, but they are. All that information's out there. So you've got to give them the means to ask those questions and come up with solutions. Otherwise, you're not doing their mental health any good at all.
I feel like, as well, they tell us about the bad things that's happening in the world, and they forget to add the fact that there is parts of it being changed.
Yeah, it's quite hard because if it wasn't hard, people would have already done it, but we need to start doing this now because we need to stop people from having a hard time because of this.
The mental health crisis is here, and maybe there'll be a report out about it in 5 years' time, but I'm telling you, it's here, and that comes from all those pressures, all those anxieties, and nowhere to put it. We've at least got to do our bit in education to help them to process what's going on and how they can cope with it.
As a teacher, I feel anxious about it. I feel anxious that it's happening and that the children are going to most likely be the ones that are going to have to deal with it.
People in power need to be listening to us, and they need to be contacting us. They need to be speaking to us instead of we're speaking to them and trying to get them to reply to their emails, which they're really awful at. They're not going to be here by 2050. We are. We're going to be the ones living our lives. I mean, Rishi Sunak, he's 42 at the moment. In 2050, I'll be 42, and the lives that we're going to be living are completely different. So why should he get a say in what it's going to be like when I'm the one who's going to be living like that?
At the same time, whilst it's important to learn about everything we're doing wrong, we also need to learn about all of the stuff that's starting to happen that everyone's doing right.
Incorporating climate into every single subject means teaching about things that we don't necessarily, or the government doesn't necessarily want to talk about. For example, the reason the climate crisis is as big and as disastrous as it is because of colonialism. That's not something they like teaching about or want to teach about, so that definitely comes into play here.
Yeah, I left teaching because I was frustrated with the way that the current system works, and I know that there are lots of other teachers in a similar situation. I had a very strange conversation with my last head teacher where he basically said, he sat me down and he was like, we're a bit worried about the amount of time you're committing to climate change and your sort of enthusiasm. And I was like, I'm a geography teacher, like it's part of what I teach. Also, just as a human being, I feel really committed to this. And that was the sort of turning point to be like, maybe I need to go and do something else.
I know we need to be accountable, but the amount of headspace taken up with worrying about that level of accountability and Ofsted and SATs is debilitating, really, in terms of having that capacity to get out there and do something different. Now, I mean, everyone can do it, but that's the thing that stands in the way. I think what the Ministry of Eco-Education have done, and particularly under Paul Turner's leadership, is to give schools a realistic way of getting around that boulder in the road, show them that there is a way of doing this where they can answer all those accountability directives, but at the same time come out with something inspiring.
It's hooked on these inquiry questions, and those are like societal questions. So they're things like, how should we heat our homes? Can we all fly? They're like really contemporary questions that frame a series of lessons. And through those lessons, teachers teach the national curriculum, but they do it by asking questions that actually young people feel are relevant to them. So it's almost like providing a context.
So we have 4 threads running through our curriculum. We have a sense of community as one thread. We have appreciating beauty as another. We have appreciating difference as a third. And then we have eco-activism as a fourth. We have something called philosophy for children, which we do in this school as well. And some of the depth of those discussions about the environment that we have for the children are inspiring. And I think it's an indicator of this school's faith in its children and them as people and what they've got to offer. They're not just empty vessels. They're living, breathing human beings. They happen to be smaller than us, but they have a lot to offer. And they're very capable of divergent thinking.
It gives us land, it gives us food in meat and vegetables, and after all it's given to us, humans just take more.
This is really good learning. This is where learning comes alive and where children do hold on to that knowledge, not just because we built it in building blocks up through the school, but because they're morally invested in it and they're bringing their emotions with it. That kind of learning is the kind of learning you remember. So just from an educational angle, this is a winner.
I think they become so passionate about it and we talk about it so much. You want them to be bothered about it. You want them to want to go out and make a difference.
And it is that sense of botheredness we're looking for. It's not a word, botheredness, but we want the children to feel morally bound by the knowledge that they take on, and morally bound in that we want them to do something with that knowledge to try and make the world a slightly better place.
Part of the reason it's called the Ministry of Eco-Education is a massive tongue-in-cheek. The Department for Education is not doing enough. We're just going to create our own. What we're trying to say is teachers have so much potential they can mobilise right now. We just need to help them to understand how they can activate that and support them to do that. This is something so important. The government should be investing in this.
Teach the Future is a student-led organisation. We're just trying to campaign for climate education throughout the entire curriculum. So from primary school up to university, we really want it to be embedded into curriculum like it's woven for our lives, because we see it every single day, but in schools it's not taught every single day, which it should be.
It could mean looking at texts from people who have experienced the impacts of the climate crisis firsthand in English. It could mean having climate graphs as contextual data in maths. It could be looking at the solutions to the climate crisis in things like sociology or politics. In history, we could look at the Industrial Revolution and how we even got to the point of climate crisis in the first place.
Our main project is our Climate Education Bill, which was written by Scarlett Westbrook.
The Climate Education Bill is the first ever bill to have been written by a student, myself. If passed, it would essentially mean that we incorporate climate education into every single subject, from nursery right until post-18 education. It would also mean that we teach teachers to teach about the climate crisis. So it would ensure that teacher training qualifications are updated and teachers are adequately given the resources to teach about this, because it's not something they're currently trained in.
That's the thing, that the teachers who are teaching at the moment never had this kind of curriculum.
I think the reason we haven't seen progress on the bill is literally because the government just doesn't care about climate.
I don't think people make that connection, that when you vote, you're voting for an education system or a certain philosophy. At the moment, we are very entrenched in a particular ideology, and we need to mobilise people to understand that there's a different way.
But to the people who say we already have climate education, in the nicest way possible, you're wrong. We're getting so much closer to 2050, which is always a date that's sort of like hovering above our heads, and we're getting so much closer to that every year, and it's not getting any better, so we need to start educating children now. I mean, obviously it would have been great to start teaching them this 10 years ago, but it's better late than never.
So you can write to your local MP asking them to sign our early day motion, which is just called the Climate Education Bill. And by doing that, they'd be helping us show the government that MPs care about and support climate education. You can also ask your MP to write a letter to the Education Secretary asking him to adopt the Climate Education Bill into law.
What we say is basically, you are someone situated within a community. Everyone lives near a school. Someone actively contacting a school and saying, you should do this, has an impact.
I hope that in 10 years we have a generation of school leavers who are entering university, higher education, or the workforce with clear and comprehensive information on what the future is going to hold for them, as well as how they can cope with their present situation.
We've been talking about how some people suffering because of how much food we're throwing away, and what we could do to stop that and make people not suffer as much because of what we're doing.
The future is within the young people, and so we do need to care about it, and we need to keep going, even if it feels a bit endless.
And I hope that if we teach students about climate crisis, and also about how whenever people have survived bad events, it's been because they've come together. I'd hope that information kind of translates into how we treat each other and how we act, and hopefully means that we have a better world.
It makes me feel quite powerful because I know the change that I can make is so big, even though I'm such a small part of the world.
The way we can help our world is just to join together and try make a big community and try and get the government to understand how important it is to us.
The biggest thing for me was that sense of going from apathy and that sense of feeling like the world happens to you, that you are just some sort of actor within it and stuff kind of happens to you, instead actually helping people to realise that they can have a positive impact and that through their own actions they can change the world.
Well, I came into teaching to empower children to be better than where they started from, if you will, like a social ability, get better. And by better, I don't mean always wealth, I mean happier. I mean, people are going to leave the earth in a better place than we found it, are going to make communities feel better and more empowered as well. So to have a child enact things like that is the most heartwarming thing I can have. So literally, it's a children's voice. Listen to them. That's lit my fire, and I think it'll continue to do that as long as I can breathe and manage this.